Hi friends, welcome to Not the Top 20 podcast, a League One final day recap. Just 50 minutes or so after the full times blew. This podcast sponsored by Sky Bet and the Sky Bet EFL Building Foundations Fund. It's me, Ali, and him, George, and there was action, particularly in the playoff picture, but we've got a couple of things to tie off after 46 games of a very intense League One season. We'll start at the bottom, where the final relegation spot still needed to be sorted out, but it all depended on Exeter, George. The last couple of weeks have felt like the only thing that was going to make the relegation picture interesting, if you like, for the neutral anyway, would be Exeter City coming on strong to finish the season. They didn't do that. They didn't win their last couple of games. And today they lost to Bradford and they are relegated. And that made the rest of the relegation picture irrelevant. So Leyton Orient, for example, with a 2-2 draw against Burton, survive.
Yeah. Obviously quite a weird pod this, because unlike other ones where we talk through all the games, we're going to probably miss out a few games that happened that were relevant before the game started. But this one was a bit strange because Leyton Orient took the lead against Burton within a minute. And for Exeter to stay up, they needed to win this game and they needed Leyton Orient to lose their game. So as soon as that happened, it felt like it was going to be an incredibly tough task. And having not been at the game, I'm guessing that probably came through, because in the first half, Exeter didn't have a single shot against Bradford, which for a game they needed to win to stay up, and for a team that have been rallying in recent weeks was a big surprise. But I had two screens in the first half. I had one screen on Soccer Saturday showing the goals that came in, and I had one screen on this game, and Bradford were just by far the better team. Just dominated in every single area, but had basically all the ball, all territory, creating all the chances, and made Caden Jackson finish well with a nice strike across the keeper into the bottom right-hand corner. After 27 minutes, it was coming and it was deserved, and it was a reflection of how the game had gone up to that point. In the second half, credit to Exeter, who came out at half-time, and despite the fact that I think Orient at that moment went into half-time 1-1 and scored shortly after half-time, they obviously knew going in that all they needed was to find a way to get back into the game and hope things went their way elsewhere. And they were much better in the second half, but weren't able to find an equaliser when Sarcevic put Bradford 2-0 up, despite the fact that McGuinness scored late on. It was the end of their League One stay, 4 seasons in League One, a time that was kind of underpinned by Gary Caldwell just doing a really good job for quite a long time. So often, context gets stripped out of managerial performance at the bottom end of a league where budgets are smaller. And he was just one of the most unheralded managers in the league. And his departure at a time where it kind of felt like Exeter were probably safe and that it shouldn't matter too much. It's no coincidence that he left. Uncertainty came in. An internal appointment was made and then binned very quickly when results turned, and Matt Taylor came in, and eventually the performances did improve, and this was their first defeat in 4 games, having lost so many games prior to that. But it was too little too late, and we say farewell to them in what will feel like a pretty avoidable defeat.
Yeah, I think with Exeter, look, I agree with you, and I was probably guilty of this, but the Caldwell departure, looking back, felt a little too much like, Gary, you go with our best wishes. We're fine for this season. We can transition to another manager and we can build again for next season and everything will be great. Since his departure, 1 win, 8 defeats and 7 draws. They've lost half of their games. They've only won 1 in 16, and clearly that led to them flying down the table. There's been a couple of teams that were down there picked up, like Wigan, for example, after Gary Caldwell joined them, like Blackpool, most specifically, Doncaster as well, Burton to an extent. So it's a pretty tough scene. I mean, being a fan-owned club in League One right now is pretty much untenable. Wimbledon fans will say, hold on, we've stayed up, and that is true. I think Exeter fans would say, wait till you do another year and then another year and then another year. The clubs in this league lose 3 or 4 million quid a year routinely, and those losses are just pocketed, or rather funded, by the owners. And Exeter, owned by their fans, they don't have the privilege of that. They have to try and break even. They've had some really tough times in terms of governance over the last couple of years, quite a lot of mistakes made. Again, there is no room for error when you run the club like this, and unfortunately there have been errors made, costs cut, and it has made it very, very difficult to stay up. Even so, I guess it's hard to swallow when I think after 30 games, they probably had something like 39 points. They would have felt very, very clear of it. And instead, they've slid right back down to League Two, even with Matt Taylor, a formerly very successful manager here, coming back in and not able to save the day. So, yeah, that made the rest of the relegation picture irrelevant. Leyton Orient survive. They drew 2-2 with Burton at home to a Burton team that, for whom survival had already been achieved. Orient went ahead early on, but Burton hitting back twice to equalise. It's probably just the final chapter of a desperately disappointing season for Leyton Orient. I feel like it's probably going to be one where people say, let no one ever speak of this season ever again. It didn't end in the worst possible outcome, but it wasn't far off. And for a team that made the playoff final last season to finish 20th is clearly a gigantic drop-off. Now, the League One playoff picture was pretty nuts. George, Stevenage were kind of the ones to be shot at. Luton and Argyle finishing the season strongly were shooting at them. Bradford had to be careful as well. Stockport had to be careful as well. In the end, we've ended up with Stockport third and Bradford fourth, with Bolton dropping down from third to fifth. That's because they all were drawing with 20 minutes to go. Stevenage were drawing at home to Wigan, Luton were drawing at Bolton, and Argyle were drawing at Northampton, who had just gone down to 10 men. In the end, they all ended up scoring and winning. Argyle first to go for a period of time into sixth, and then in injury time, Stevenage got the goal they needed and Luton followed them in.
Yeah, I think of all the final day kind of drama, this was the one that ebbed and flowed the way that we would like, with all teams at some point feeling the delirium. And it went on pretty late to find out what was going to happen. With Argyle going 2-0 down within 15 minutes or so against Northampton away from home was obviously not expected at all. And then the fact was that when they went 3-2 up, they were therefore in that sixth spot because neither Luton or Stevenage were winning at the time. Luton, who went ahead relatively early through a penalty, which was shrouded in drama anyway, because Jordan Clark clearly slipped as he took the penalty and, kicked the ball onto his left foot, his standing foot, and then it went into the net. But the goal was still given by the referee. And then Stevenage, who just in classic Stevenage way, had a home game against Wigan where they created not much, but their opposition, Wigan, created even less. So Stevenage kind of sat in that sixth spot for most of the day because after Luton had gone ahead, Bolton equalised very quickly afterwards until suddenly Argyle went ahead. And then with 10 minutes on the clock, Stevenage, who have kind of been so impressive in the last few weeks in terms of keeping up where they are and maintaining a performance level despite the kind of giants that surround them. Suddenly the question was asked to them saying, can you go and win the game? And yes, they did.
What was their answer? Yes, we can.
It was yes, we can and this is, as neutral podcasters, a difficult one for us to talk about, right? Because on the one hand, I am over the moon for Alex Ravel. I'm over the moon for Stevenage fans that they've got over the line because it's been an incredible, titanic performance from them this season. The fact is, they started the season incredibly well. They then had a huge dip, underlying numbers, results, everything slid alarmingly to the extent that on our betting newsletter in December, January, we put them up for relegation, as was the alarming slide. But January went well for them in terms of recruitment, and Ravel managed to find a way to go back to what they'd done so well early in the season, which was to be one of the best defensive teams in the league. And the form that they've shown, as I say, being kept up to task by a rampant Luton, by a rampant Argyle, to finish in sixth position with a goal difference of +3, showing the marginal, they have to win games by so little, is an incredible achievement and huge credit to them. But there will be Luton fans listening who themselves found a way to go to Bolton, the Bolton team who played full strength. And Stephen Schumacher said in the week that he wanted to finish third or fourth, wanted to have the advantage of a home game second, wanted to make sure that Luton didn't get in the playoffs because of their form. Went behind 2-1 in that game and found a way to come back and win it, which would have been enough for Luton to get into the top six had Stevenage not won. And the Stevenage goal is unbelievably controversial. Yes, of course, the first Luton goal probably shouldn't have stood either, but that's a penalty retake. It's still a 0.75 chance of scoring a goal. In this case, the most important goal of the whole picture here in League One for Stevenage doesn't look like, from any pictures we can see, it ever crossed the line.
Mm.
And that is a huge shame because, for Stevenage, obviously they won't care. It's a huge break for them. They're in the playoffs. They play Stockport over 2 legs. And they will feel a just reward for an incredible season. But if you're a Luton Town fan, you are going to understandably be absolutely seething, because you're going to look at that goal and say, well, hold on, there's not that much left on the clock here. If that doesn't go in, if that's not given, then it's hugely likely that Stevenage aren't going to score a winner, and therefore we're going to be in the top 6. So it's a messy end. It's a dramatic end. As a neutral, it was remarkable to watch. But I can understand why Luton fans might be pretty upset this evening.
Yeah, absolutely. Batoni had hit the bar for Wigan just a minute before that, I think, as well. So, Wigan had been knocking at the door. Stevenage potentially fortunate to have scored. I mean, I'm one of those slightly tedious blokes that thinks, like, based on the angles I've seen, it looks like it may not have crossed the line. And I'd probably, if gun to my head, say that it didn't. But I really think we have to remember that, we're watching at angles where we cannot see.
It didn't help that Mike
There's
Dean
no watches.
No
There's no watches in League One. The refs don't have them beeping. The linesman has presumably 6 bodies with which to look through. You can argue, as long as you like, whether, if you can't really see, should you give a goal? And even I'm just completely. No one knows. I don't really know, but it's a pretty tough scene. Luton going up to Bolton and doing what they needed to do. Plymouth going to Northampton and doing what they needed to do. Both games ending 3-2. Quite remarkable, really. And instead, it is Stevenage that cling on to 6th spot. Now, Stockport, they won at Barnsley, having lost at home to Port Vale in midweek when they just needed a point to make the playoffs in quite alarming circumstances, having announced on Friday that their long-term CEO, previously Director of Football, Simon Wilson, will be leaving the club. Something that came a little out of the blue for a lot of the fans and therefore caused a bit of uncertainty. Thankfully for them, they stepped up on the final day. They've beaten Barnsley away from home by 3-1. In doing so, they have finished 3rd. Bradford, in beating Exeter, have finished 4th. Bolton dropped to 5th, and Stevenage have 6th spot. What that means is, with Luton on 74 and Argyle on 73, 6 teams were separated by 4 points from 3rd to 8th. A really entertaining portion of the EFL, this League One playoff battle. And those late charges from Luton and Argyle, not enough. They are punished for starting the season too slowly, for not having their ducks in a row. It's a 46-game season, and they started theirs too late. Stockport will play Stevenage, first leg at Stevenage. Bradford will play Bolton, first leg at Bolton. The playoff preview podcast will come out on Wednesday. We will be going very deep on all 4 teams on those 2 matchups with some predictions, some betting picks as well, midweek. Now, Tales from the Beach, where the top 2 have been sorted for a long time. In fact, Cardiff end up finishing 14 points clear of 3rd, and Lincoln end up finishing 12 points clear of Cardiff, and an absurd 26 points clear of 3rd place, because they won. Of course they did. They won 2-0. Goals from Ben House and Rob Street. You can write the song about a house in the middle of the street in your own time. A 2-0 win, which broke a League One record, the longest unbeaten run ever in League One from Lincoln City. They have not lost a game since the 22nd of November. They got better and they got better and they got better, and then they won promotion and they got better again, and they finished with 103 points. It is one of the most incredible seasons that we'd have covered in 10 years of doing this podcast. 3 leagues each, we'll call it 30 seasons worth or 30 divisions worth. Lincoln City's 103 points in League One this season will go down as surely top 5, top 3 fodder. Cardiff, well, they had a bit of fun at Mansfield. I don't know, is it fun losing 5-4?
Mansfield had fun.
Fun game.
Fun in the sun.
Mansfield 5, Cardiff 4 means that Mansfield finish in 10th place in League One, which is a really impressive finish. Strong end to the season with them. They enjoyed the beach. They beat Stockport. They beat Huddersfield away from home. Then they went to Posh and Drew before finishing with a 5-4 win at home to Cardiff. Goals from Sweeney, Aikens at the double, Oates, Iro, Kellyman scored 2 of Cardiff's goals as well. Mansfield with a 10th place finish. Some rumours ahead of the weekend that Brian Barry Murphy is on Burnley's shortlist after they sacked Scott Parker. Watch this space there. We also had Wimbledon losing 4-0 at home to Huddersfield. Dons had their survival secured last weekend. Johnny Jackson wanted today to be a party atmosphere, and his words pre-game made it clear that for them the survival is the achievement. Today's game was potentially something of an afterthought after such a grind really over the last month or two to get over the line. Huddersfield enjoyed that match situation. Alfie May with a couple to win 4-0. George Blackpool continued their strong finish with a win today. They finished 13th in the end, which is pretty remarkable. They finished very strongly, 4 wins in a row, 6 wins in their last 7, and 5 of those wins to nil. The last 3 all 1-0 wins. They will be a really interesting team for us to try and work out over the summer and ahead of next season's 1-24s, finishing strongly from a position of doom and gloom just a couple of weeks ago under Ian Evatt. And Peterborough 1, Doncaster Rovers 3, Peterborough 1, Billy Sharp 3. His last game for Doncaster Rovers, this iconic EFL goal scorer scores a hat-trick. It couldn't be more perfect. And as Opta tweeted, he has now scored an EFL hat-trick in his teens, in his 20s,
no way,
in his 30s, and now in his 40s. Friend of the show, of course, after joining us in Sheffield on stage for our live show, and then in the
karaoke bar,
in the pub and in the karaoke bar. What a man, what a goal scorer.
Yeah, incredible, and an amazing kind of end to his Donny career. Phenomenal for him to do that. Probably a shame it wasn't at home, but yeah, amazing. And I'm excited to see what happens next, because he'd kind of suggested to us in Sheffield last summer that it's not just the playing side of things that he's interested in. So I wonder if we might see Billy Sharp, the manager, at some point in the future. But yeah, an amazing goal scorer, and great that he had his big day in what was otherwise a game that didn't matter much, but he made it matter to the Donny fans. Yeah,
and Wycombe, they end up 11th, snapping their 5-game winless streak with another very high-scoring game, 3-2 win at home to Rotherham. Rotherham were 2-1 up in this one in the first half, 2 goals from young Jack Holmes. But Bradley Fink, big old Finky, who they signed. He's a former Dortmund youth team goal scorer. We noted that. We were excited to see Finky. He was very tall. He looked quite exciting.
Very tall.
Today was his first league goal of the season. Wow. And I'm delighted for him because he's worked very, very hard for that.
I thought I was with you the other day and you were like, oh, Bradley Fink, I've been waiting for you.
He got a key assist the other day.
There we go. Mate, he's slowly.
I called that his big moment so far in the quarters of Wycombe. And here he got his first league goal. The winner was scored by a very young man called Micah Olabiyi in injury time to win it for Wycombe. So that's the end of the League One regular season. We'll be back in midweek with our playoff preview. As mentioned, it's Stockport against Stevenage. It's Bradford against Bolton. We had some drama today. It wasn't unbelievable. The relegation battle didn't have much on it on account of Exeter's defeat. And the League One playoff picture was one of the more exciting parts of final day. Let us know what you've enjoyed about this season in the comments. The final league table for posterity: Lincoln in first and Cardiff second. The 4 playoff teams: Stockport, Bradford, Bolton and Stevenage. Luton 7th, Plymouth Argyle 8th, Huddersfield 9th, Mansfield have finished 10th and Wycombe 11th, with Reading rounding out the top half. Blackpool 13th, Doncaster Rovers 14th, Barnsley 15th, Wigan 16th, Burton 17th, Peterborough 18th, AFC Wimbledon 19th, Leyton Orient 20th, and the 4 relegated teams: Exeter City on 49, Port Vale on 42, Rotherham 41, and Northampton, a frankly embarrassing end to the season, losing their last 10 games, 11 games in a row, finishing bottom on a feeble 35 points. Thanks for listening to the League One segments all season. It's been a real pleasure. We're back again on Thursday with our playoff preview. Cheers and go well.